Okay. Let's try this again. Is everything working now? I think everything is working now. I was a little bit concerned about this in the first place, and is it all working now? I think it is. It looks like JP was here, and JP is already gone. Oh, of course it is. Hold on. Let me go out and send a message on this one. So I need to send a message out to everyone. Let's see. Minor stream difficulties that have been resolved. We are live. So there's that. And there's that. And that should be sufficient. So that should get all of the notifications out. Okay, so starting all over now that all of my audio is working again. It's gonna be that kind of morning. Alright, so hello, Shadowcat back, and we are working on Warhammer again. Maybe, if everything works. It's been a rough morning so far. Very busy morning. But if everything holds out and everything continues to work, we're good. We finished up the Tau, so that's good. As much as I do love the Tau, and I really do love the Tau. 4 months, I think it was 4 months, spent on the Tau might have been a bit much. I can't help it though, the Tau are just extensive. I mean, when it comes to every other race, you have the race. But not with the Tau, because the Tau on their own are a combination of 5 races because of the caste system and genetic diversification. And then you get into all their others. So there's that. Then you get into all their vehicles and the massive amount of gear they come with. I mean, the Tau are really good at one thing, and that is just having all the toys. But we're done. We're done with them. We're moving on. So today in the chat we have JP, and JP says it's showtime. You know what I realize that I really need? I need to have like an intro for my channel. And I don't know how it's going to be cut together, but at some point it has to be like Roger Smith from the Big O just yelling, "It's showtime." And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you're missing out. It's from an anime called Big O. Go watch it. It's worth your time. I like it for the big robots. However, there's a lot going on in there. There's mysteries, there's noir, there's all kinds of stuff. It will appeal to a very large audience. It even appeals to the philosophy majors, okay? So you may not have any use for your philosophy degree once you get out of college. However, you will enjoy the hell out of Big O. It'll be fun. Let's see. Blizzard Star is also in the chat. Hello, Blizz. Good to see you there. And with everybody here, I think we're ready to get started on this. So, today, we are doing the Eldar, or the Craftworld Aeldari, or the Asuryani? I'm not even sure. I've never heard that name before. Full disclosure, I do not know that much about the Eldar. So when I really got into 40k at first, I fell in love with the giant robots. Okay, I love the Titans. I love the enormous, like, walking palaces and castles of the Imperium. And I love the smaller Imperial Knights. They're good too. I even love like the little Castellan robots. Okay? I just love robots in general. And they were the first ones that I fell in love with. I also love the... Yeah, what do you call them? Because the Mechanicus are not steampunk, even though they incorporate parts of it. They're not watchwork, even though they incorporate parts of that. They're just like the amalgamation of all the different technologies in one faction. And I love their aesthetic. So that was the ones that I fell in love with first. And let's be honest, it's probably because I got to them first that they became my favorite. Because obviously when you go into 40k, the first thing you're going to go to are the Space Marines. They are the face of 40k. And literally adjacent to them on one side of the Space Marines, you have the Imperium Guard. Because you just do. I mean, they're there. They work with the Astartes. And then on the other side, you had the Mechanicus. Why? One gives you manpower, one gives you all the other not manpower. And then, of course, you have the Astartes right there in the middle, who benefit from both. So, obviously I hit the Mechanicus first, but then the Tau? Once I saw the Tau, it's like, ooh, I love the Tau. But I'm already kind of committed over here. So, as pretty as you are, and I'm sure you have a wonderful personality, I'm kind of already dating the Mechanicus. So, yeah. It was literally just a matter of who I got to first. And I do love the Tau. I mean, very close second. I love all their mechs, I love all their tanks, I love the giant guns, the missile pods, all of it. It's fantastic. The Eldar, however, not as much. The Eldar, from what I've seen, I don't really care for like the whole aesthetic of them. I mean, they're okay, there's nothing wrong with them. I was never really attracted to them that much. And when it comes to all their like giant mechs and stuff, the Tau have giant robots. And they behave like giant robots. They are thunderous. They're lumbering. They're terrifying because, I mean, you feel the ground shake, okay? And you hear trees snapping in half, and birds take flight and scatter in all directions as this giant Tau war machine stomps its way through the forest. You know, surrounded by the hum of a fusion cannon primed and ready to fire. Eldar mechs are not like that. See, when you think about mechs, and I'm going to go back to anime for this one because it's just so much more prevalent in anime. If Tau mechs are the Megadeus from Big O, the Eldar mechs are more like the Evangelions from Evangelion. They are much more nimble, much more dexterous. An Eldar mech is less of a mech and more of just a giant Eldar using a smaller Eldar for a brain. And as cool as that is, and it is severely cool, it's just not the aesthetic I'm going for. Mind you, I did watch Evangelion, I enjoyed it, but I would rather have the more mechanical aspects than I would the more organic aspects. So I was never that into the Eldar from that perspective. Now, to be fair, one of the things the Eldar do have going for them is they're all psychers, and if I can't have robots, magic is a close second, and since psychic abilities are the closest thing you're going to get to magic, I can get into that. So there's going to be a lot of learning here, because I didn't spend nearly as much time with these guys. But that's fine, I love to learn. So why don't we go ahead and get started on the learning part. We will need to have a blank spreadsheet. And we need to have some kind of resource document. Which we have. So let's go ahead and get to work. And today, of course, we're going to need to go through and make some kind of overview so we know what we're working on. So this is going to be the Craftworld Aeldari. Go ahead and merge those, center those, and we'll even make that a little bit bigger, because why not? Alright, so what do we need to do for the Craftworld Aeldari? The first thing, of course, we're going to need is going to be an Eldar race. Obviously, if you're going to play an Eldar, you gotta be able to play an Eldar. Now, fortunately for us, whereas with the Tau, every Tau has to be one of 5 separate races. As far as I know, and this is of course subject to change, there is only one Eldar. I don't think they have any servitor races or anything like that. It's just the Eldar. Oh, Jeffrey's in here. I haven't seen you in forever. Hello, Jeff. It's good to see you again. I hope you're well. I do worry about people when I don't see them for a while. It's like I haven't seen Tux in here in a while, and I know he's still around. I know Tux is still around because he left a comment on the lecture from yesterday. I just haven't seen him in any of the live streams. Alright, so what else? The Aeldari Empire was without equal. They counted themselves as masters of the stars, but over 10 Terran millennia, that is 10,000 years, the Eldar's overweening pride and their fall into hedonistic practices led to a cataclysm that all but eradicated their kind and gave birth to the chaos god Slanesh. We're not going to be covering that. While I do acknowledge the fact that the Eldar were split, they gave birth to the chaos god Slanesh, and this of course led to the Dark Eldar, which if I remember my terminology are called the Drukhari? I think. As far as I know, they are still the same as Eldar, so we don't really need to make anything specific for them, and besides that, you can't play a Drukhari anyway, as far as I know, because everything that I know about Drukhari is that they are, like, chronically homicidal, so not exactly team players. And Jeffrey says, how are ye? I'm actually doing good this morning. We had some technical difficulties. However, the technical difficulties seem to be resolved. So, you know, fingers crossed. As long as all my sound stuff keeps working, as long as the internet keeps working, everything is good. Okay. Despite their boundless power, the heart of their civilization was torn out by this catastrophe of their own making, forcing many of the surviving Eldar... Well, actually, many of the surviving Aeldari, now calling themselves Eldar to the outsiders and the Asuryani among themselves, to flee upon gigantic continent-sized starships once used for commerce and trade that they named Craftworlds. Now, this is something that I need to learn more about. Is it continent-sized starships, or is it actual continents? Because I had heard that the Eldar homeworld had been shattered, and that pieces of their homeworld were actually being used as starships. Now, I suppose both things could be true. There's no reason why both things could not be true. But that was my understanding. It's one of the reasons why they live on the Craftworlds. Their homeworld is gone. But I mean, like I said, I'm learning things today, so maybe we'll learn about that too. Let's see. They rely on mystical technologies like the Psycho-Crystalline Spirit Stones and the Psychoactive Wraith-Bone Infinity Gauntlets that comprise the skeletons of their craft worlds to store their souls after death and prevent their consumption by Slaanesh. Now, this is something that I did know. Eldar kinda don't die. It's weird, and we're going to have to learn more about this, but Eldar souls are a thing. Actually, I think souls in general in 40k are a thing, because human souls kind of end up in the warp as well. So while a human soul at least, isn't a tangible thing, the essence of what it is to be human can be manipulated by the warp. It can be touched by demons, it can be bent by warp currents. It's weird because human souls, there's like no proof for a human having a soul, but at the same time there's like really strong evidence for it being there. It's like human souls are a bit like gravity. We have everything to prove that gravity exists except for gravity itself. We can say, look, we have stars, planets, galaxies, we have experiments, we have measurements, we have everything to prove that gravity exists. Okay, then what is gravity? I'll get back to you on that one. Human souls are kind of the same way. It's like, look, we know what happens to the spirit of a human when they're exposed to a warp, and we know what demons can do to humans, okay? So, the humans clearly have a soul of some kind. So where is the human soul? How do you prove it? How do you show it? How do you measure it? I'll get back to you on that one. However, with Eldar souls, they literally have these infinity circuits where when an Eldar is killed, or they just die for whatever reason, their souls actually enter the infinity circuits. And they literally can be weighed and measured and everything else. It's a bit weird. So Eldar, unless they're like killed, I think in a very specific way, or like their soul is sacrificed to Slaanesh or something like that, I'm not sure. I'm sure that we'll learn. Eldar don't die. I think what that means is, like, if you're playing an Eldar character, technically speaking, if you had a piece of, like, one of these Wraithbone Infinity Circuits, and we can take a look at this later on to see if that's even possible, but maybe your Eldar character could be immortal. Like, we'll have to be really careful how we write those rules, because we have to figure out exactly how Eldar are reborn, how they get a new body. Given the technology of the Eldar, maybe they can clone, maybe they can just, like, print a new body, and then they can somehow integrate the new, or one of the souls into it. We're going to have to read up on that. But it's possible, ever so slightly possible, that an Eldar character could just straight up be immortal. And every time you die, all you need is to find a new vessel to incorporate yourself into, and then you can come back. Now, if that's the case, it would be incredibly difficult to pull off, but the benefits of doing so, I mean, I don't think that I can really overstate how powerful that would be. So, Eldar race, possibly immortal? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. It is the use of these technologies in their pursuit of a rigid system of behavioral modification to keep their darker impulses in check that shape the Asuryani lifestyle and define their culture as distinct from that of other Aeldari subcultures. Okay, so that's information that we're going to need. Very rigid system of behavioral modification. That is going to be reflected by the character, or at least by the race. The Aeldari species has a long and complex spacefaring history, so long in fact that little is known for certain about the course of their physical evolution and early planet-bound existence. The original Aeldari homeworld was destroyed during the catastrophic collapse of the Aeldari civilization known as the Fall of the Aeldari. I knew their planet was gone. However, we can look into this more and see what happened. The remnants of the Aeldari culture that survived the cataclysm among the Asuryani preserve much of their species' history in the form of traditional stories, songs, and dance. Written records, monuments, and visual records were almost completely destroyed, except for a few instances where they were taken aboard void craft fleeing the doomed worlds. As a humanoid race, they are physically very similar to humans, although not entirely identical by any means, which, I mean, if that's an Eldar, yeah, they're actually a lot more human than I thought they'd be. Interesting. Oh, and Jeffrey says they use portals that do not need the warp. Yes, the Eldar Webway. We will get to that. We will probably save that, actually, because once we get through the Eldar, we have one of two choices once we're done with the Eldar, and that is to either go back and finish up the rest of the races, because, like, we still need to do vehicles and such for the Imperium and for the Mechanicus. So we got to finish them up. Plus, there are things that, like the Castellan robots, we got to figure them out as well. There's little things we got to fill in here and there. Alternately, though, one big part of the Eldar that I should probably write down now, even though I know I'll remember it, is they are all Psychers. And we are going to need to have an entire system that I have not even begun to think about yet. We're going to need an entire system for psychic powers. That is going to be very complicated because, like, first off, I'm going to need to find a list of all the psychic abilities, if I can. And I do mean, like, all of them. Tux is in the chat and says, "Oh no, a black cat. I should watch it closely. Maybe if I like it, it won't steal my soul." I mean, that's true, and it would have been true if you had done that on the very first live stream. I stole your soul a long time ago. It's alright though, I'm keeping it safe. It's under my pillow. Jeffrey just like, what? I'm like, what? I mean, I don't steal souls. I have no idea what you're talking about. Actually, that's a lie. Cats don't steal souls. Cats steal your breath. That's why they sit on your chest, okay? They're stealing your breath. They're stealing your essence that way. Alright, so yeah. After Eldar, we either go back and finish up the other races, or we move straight into psychic powers and try to develop that system. After psychic powers, then we have to go through and do the warp. And that's going to be complicated because The Imperium obviously uses warp drives, and not all warp drives are created equally, so we're going to have to develop a new form of warp travel, because Starjammer actually does have FTL travel. And it's usually really simple. It's just you make a piloting check and you roll the dice and you see what happens. Usually it's fine, you just travel from point A to point B, there you go. Warp travel in 40k is a lot more complicated. So we're going to have to go through and develop a lot of new rules for that. Like, for example, what are they called? Geller fields? I think it's Geller fields. If you're going to have a ship, okay? Which, I mean, I assume this is going to be kind of rogue trader-ish to give you all the latitudes that you'll want. If we're going to do this, you're going to have your own ship. You'll have to have a crew on there, and it'll be just kind of a AI kind of crew. They're not going to have access to most things. They're not going to be able to do crew functions, but they'll be there, you know, in spirit. But one of the things that you're going to need is, if you're going to travel the warp, you have to have a Geller field. And if you don't have a Geller field, then the warp can literally and metaphysically and in like every single way you can possibly conceive, and a few ways that you can't conceive, tear your ship and your crew apart. So any ship going through the warp has to have a Geller field. Now that's fine, it's a Geller field. What's a Geller field? It is a force field that creates a pocket of reality around your ship. And since demons and the warp cannot exist in regular material reality, it's basically like a force field against the warp. That's fun. Okay, great, wonderful, we've got that. How do you use the Geller field then? Well, that's actually really easy. You take a psyker, you plug them in, and you then turn their psychic abilities up to 15, and as their brain and their body begin to incinerate themselves from the inside out, they generate this Geller field. And as you travel through the warp to wherever you're going, by the time you get to the other side, the only thing left inside the pod for the psyker is like human remains and ashes. And obviously the psyker is dead. So you literally pull the lever, which then flips the capsule over, dumps out the remains into the pile of all the other dead psykers who are charred and smoldering and everything else. Pull the lever again so it falls back into place, and then plug another psyker into the pod to generate a new Geller field. So guess what? If you're going to play this, you're gonna have to find a way to manage psykers as part of your normal inventory. Which means you're gonna have to be able to go to planets and track down psykers to plug into your ship so that you can warp travel. No, 40k is not a nice place. I don't know if we've mentioned this yet, 40k is not a nice place. And that is just the Imperial method of traveling. Okay? So that is an entire system on its own. Then Tau have their own jump drives, which kind of skirt the warp, but never fully go into it. And then the Aeldari, of course, have the webway, which leads basically everywhere, bypasses the warp entirely, can show up at any point. It's going to be complicated, so FTL travel as a whole will come after psykers. But yes, the Aeldari are going to feature greatly when we get to FTL travel, just because of how incredibly potent the webway is. Let's see. Tuck says, but yes, human psychers risk things going bad when they case. It's less about mana and spell slots, more about how much you want to risk accidentally opening a portal to hell and party wipe. Absolutely. Essentially, if we had to compare what psychers are going to be like, it's going to be very, very comparable to Wild Magic circa 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons, where you will have to make concentration checks if you want to cast a spell, and failure on those checks is going to result in wild effects, which could literally be anything, because psychic powers do not obey the laws of physics. So, I mean, anything you can conceive of, and again, a few things you probably cannot conceive of, could happen. Could it actually function normally despite your best efforts? Yes, it could. Maybe you accidentally lost your concentration, and you fumbled it, but you still made it to the end zone. Great job. I mean, you say that, they risk accidentally opening a portal to hell, but think about it. A demon showing up is not necessarily the worst thing that could happen. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is the psyker loses control over their abilities and literally atomize everything around them. So congratulations. Everybody else's characters are gone. Your ship is gone. Every building around you, every living creature is gone. You have rendered this particular area into a completely sterile patch of ground. Except for yourself. Not exactly sure what you're going to do now, but that's a pretty bad end. So psychic powers are going to be very complicated as well, and very dangerous. It's going to be one of those things that's going to be like, do you really want to roll the dice on this one? What? And here's the other thing. Nobody trains to be a psyker. You are born a psyker. So much like when we did the Wheel of Time, and there was a random chance to become an Aes Sedai, or at least a channeler of some capacity. We will do the same thing here, where every single character made will have the opportunity to try and become a psyker. Now, it's not going to be forced. Like, if you absolutely do not want to be a psyker, you don't have to roll for it. But anybody will have the opportunity to roll the dice and see what kind of psyker they might become. The odds are going to be low. But if you get that, then you'll get to apply the entire template to your character and say, alright, now that my character is officially a psyker, how much do I want to put into it? Because let's say that you made a character, okay, and you wanted to be like an Imperial Guardsman. So you picked human, and because we're still using the classes from Starjammer, so when we come up here, we are still using these for the most part. I mean, we're not using some things like the Technomancer or the Witch Warper, we're not using those. But let's say you wanted to be an Imperial Guardsman. So you picked human, you picked soldier, okay? And you rolled your stats, you're like, where am I going to put my stats? And I say, okay, do you want to roll to see if you're a psyker? Okay? So you roll the dice, turns out your character is a psyker. Now you're like, well, shit. I've got a 16 and a 17 in my skills here. For a soldier, I really kind of wanted to put that 16 and 17 into my dexterity and my constitution. But now that I'm a psyker, do I want to put my points into whatever else it might actually be? Maybe we tie it into charisma, maybe tie it into wisdom, I'm not sure. Or maybe we just make it like your highest soft stat. I'm not sure I'm going to do that, but now you have a choice. It's like, do I go for my profession that I wanted? Or do I start allocating more points into my psychic abilities because psychic abilities, come on, why not? And if you don't, then it's one of those cases where, okay, I have psychic abilities. Do I ever dare use them given that I haven't invested in them? And what is my threshold then for when I might actually try it? Is it a last-ditch effort? Is it like one of those things where the group will send me in first and say, hey, try to psychic the enemy? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But there'll be a lot there. Tux also said other races have made deals with chaos or are otherwise immune to those effects. So, spell slots? Probably not. When you talk about other races that have made deals with chaos or are otherwise immune to those effects, what we're talking about, I think, there is that random chance for failure. I think what'll happen is if you came up against somebody who is chaos, so we're talking like chaos space marines or Drukhari or anything like that, it's not that they like get additional spell slots, because it's going to come down to whether they're psychic or not. I mean, if you just look at like your Chaos Space Marines, your average Chaos Space Marine, as far as I know, and I could be wrong about this, doesn't like get psychic powers just for becoming chaos. They're just Space Marines, unchained. Now that being said, any Space Marine can fall to chaos, and that does include librarians. And if a librarian was going to be casting for a chaos librarian, the chances of things going poorly, I think, are just significantly less. And the same thing would be true for the Drukhari. The Drukhari would have basically no chance of failure when it came to their psychic abilities. Just because, you know, they're not trying to wrangle chaos, they're just trying to direct it. And so, since they're not trying to stop chaos from doing what it already does, there's really no chance of it backfiring on them. I mean, perhaps a very, very small chance. But, like, that's the benefit that you would get from going to chaos. More psychic abilities. Better psychic abilities. Jeffrey said, orcs just go in with no care. Absolutely, that is true. Orcs will travel the warp. They don't give a damn. But that's because, well, number one, orcs kind of thrive in chaos, and chaos kind of thrives in orcs. And secondly, if a whole bunch of orcs' heads exploded, who cares? They're orcs. For every one that dies, 500 of them come back. So, who cares what happens to the orcs? Send them all into the warp. Tux says orcs are chaos. Orcs reaching into chaos is meh. If chaos demons do attack for some reason, it's time for war! And it's just a bonus. I mean, that is also true. I mean, if a whole bunch of demons showed up and wanted to fight the orcs would just be like, yay! And Tux also says, I came in and made one comment. One comment. And it was either perfectly on subject or I abducted the train's rails and put them on Mars. Well, I mean, it was on subject because we got to talk about the whole Psyker thing, because it's a huge part of the Eldar. And while we're not working on psychic stuff right now, this is laying the foundation for what we're going to be doing. This is not entirely derailed. This is more like the brainstorming part of the Psyker stuff later on. And Jeffrey says, Orcs and Eldar were created by the Old Ones to fight the Necrons. Kinda. They were more formed to fight the C'tan. And then the C'tan got the Necrons and tried to fight back. But that's a whole story that I'm not going to get into. There are YouTube videos out there that are literally hours long that cover the war in heaven. And I am not knowledgeable enough about it to really comment on it. It's a lot. It's also why I'm a little bit on the fence of whether or not I should make a Necron race, because I still have not found any data as to whether or not you could have a Necron who could be friendly. And Tuck says, are we talking Happy Eldar or Dark Eldar? We are only talking about, and we got a name for these guys now, the Asuryani, otherwise known as the Craftworld Aeldari. Okay? And the reason being, the Dark Eldar, otherwise known as the Drukhari, are basically the same. So even though we are designing for the Craftworld Aeldar, this will work for both of them. But obviously you're not going to be playing a Dark Eldar. It's not going to happen. But yeah, that's where we stand now. If anybody can find me like an example of a Necron who actually worked with the Imperium or the Tau, definitely not the Eldar, but basically if you could find an instance of a cooperative Necron, I could be convinced to do a Necron race at least. Like having the entire faction of Necron, I'm not sure about that, because even if we get a Necron who could join the team, I can't imagine you're going to find a whole lot of friendly Necron. So maybe we could have one. But again, that's only if I can find evidence of a Necron, just one, of a Necron who looked at an Imperial Guardsman or a Space Marine or a Tau Fire Warrior or a Tau Ethereal and decided not to shoot first. I mean, it's a really low bar, but at the same time, I don't think that the Necron rise above it. I think the Necron at this point just kill everything. Kind of like the Dark Elves. Yes, Tux, Dark Elves do torture and fornicate with and for and everything. But no, we're not going to have any Drukhari on the team. I'm sorry. The Drukhari's thing is just entirely homicidal. They don't play well with others. If you want to play an Eldar, you're going to have to play Craftworld Eldar. I'm sorry. On the tabletop, you can play Drukhari. But this is going to be more narrative-driven and more role-playing. Not just combat. Total and unending combat. Alright, let's do a little bit more reading. Let's see. As a humanoid race, Aeldari are physically very similar to humans, although not entirely identical by any means. They possess longer and cleaner limbs and fine aesthetic features, with penetrating and slightly slanted almond-shaped eyes. Their ears are also slightly pointed, but otherwise they could pass as human at first glance. The most obvious difference between humans and Aeldari can only be seen when they move, for the movements of the Aeldari radiate a subtle grace which is impossible for a human to emulate. That right there sounds like an absolute boost to their charisma, just from a visual standpoint. They're beautiful and graceful. This can be seen in even their slightest gestures or the dexterity with which they manipulate small objects. The Aeldari mind, while similar in general to the human psyche, is far more inclined towards emotional extremes. Because of this, Aeldari are more intelligent, but also far more intense than humans. Now that sounds very interesting. Because what I get from that is, number one, because of all of their mental training, I feel like they should get a pretty big boost to their will save. However, that being said, since they're also far more intense, I see the Eldar as being able to double all of their morale modifiers. So if you were to give an Eldar a morale bonus, and it's like, this morale bonus gives you like a +2 on your next attack, an Eldar should be able to turn that into a +4 because they just feel it that much more intensely. At the same time, however, if you take a morale penalty, like say somebody uses an ability or like a psychic ability that causes a morale debuff in an area, if everybody would get a -2 morale penalty on like everything, it strikes me that an Eldar should get a -4 penalty just because they feel things that much more. So, double morale modifiers? Maybe. Oh, and also, we can go with an up will save. This is a lot to put into the Eldar, but the Eldar kinda gonna be worth it. Like with the Tau, when it comes to the Tau, you have your choices as for what you want to play. So whatever playstyle you want, you can probably find a cast of the Tau that will fit you. There is only one Eldar, so I don't mind maybe over-specializing them a little bit. Let's see. Although an Aeldari and a human can both feel grief and joy, the Aeldari's experience is likely to be far more extreme. Like we said. This natural inclination towards emotional extremes is both a blessing and a curse to the Aeldari. So like I said, morale bonuses going in both directions. On the positive side, it gives them an unparalleled appreciation for life and an unrivaled ability to express themselves through music and other creative endeavors. A melody or gesture made with grace and skill can elicit an intensity of pleasure which is unimaginable to a human. Trying to make us jealous here. But this potential for joy is paralleled by an equal capacity to feel despair, ambition, and even hatred. Confronted by grief or other personal setbacks, an Aeldari suffers mental torments which far exceed the boundaries of human anguish. The extreme nature of their temperament makes it very important that the Aeldari maintain a measure of self-control at all times, for it is dangerously easy for them to become entranced by and ultimately dependent on the experiences that their culture offers them. Now that sounds very interesting, but I'm not sure if there is a mechanical way that really fits in. I mean, there are ways it could. We could easily write this in with addiction rules. And I think that we actually have that. If we come here, go down to afflictions. Corruptions, maybe. Shadow corruption, no. Diseases? Addiction, here we go. So, addiction. This says drug use, but for Aeldari, it could be an addiction to experience. So, this track could be physical, mental, or both. Specific to whatever drug, but in this case, we could just pick one. Probably mental, but it could also be both. The frequency is once a day when not using the drug. Meaning that if you were an Aeldari and you wanted to indulge, I think that what would happen is you could run the risk of addiction to just experience, to emotion. And like Tux, you were talking about becoming a dark elf. I mean, this might be a good pathway to introducing the Drukhari into the setting. So it says, if a creature takes a drug while it's progressed beyond healthy on the drug's progression, the DC saving throw against addiction increases by 2. A creature can attempt a save against an addiction only on a day when it hasn't taken the drug. Each day spent without using the drug increases the addiction's DC by 2 to a minimum of the starting DC, but using the drug again even once returns the DC to its highest value. Each drug addiction is a separate disease. The cure for it is 3 consecutive saves, which is pretty steep. Now, the real question here is how would you determine when something is addictive enough to threaten it? Because if we talk about anything that offers like a morale bonus, well, then that would really make you not want to use anything with a morale bonus in the actual game, because you don't want to overload your Eldar, now do you? At the same time, though, if we make it too loose, then it would be too easy to just avoid everything. I like the idea of this. I'm not sure if it's really implementable. Implementable. Is that a word? It's a word now. But I do like it, and I do think that if you were to have the addiction there, because the disease track, I wonder if I can find it. For full details on diseases, click here. So there's the physical disease track, which is healthy, latent, weakened, impaired, debilitated, bedridden, comatose, and then dead. Mental, which is healthy, latent, weakened, impaired, befuddled, dissociated, comatose, and dead. Or both. We could absolutely do both. The interesting thing about this is, the interesting thing I see about this is that we could do this. However, with the Aeldari, we could probably replace dead. Like, if you had an Aeldari and they became addicted to experience, if they became addicted to emotion, you could have them potentially go down this disease track where, I mean, they would kind of want it, but they could ignore it, but then they become weakened because they're not getting it, then they become impaired because they can't function without it, debilitated, bedridden, comatose. However, instead of dying, what if that became the point at which your Aeldari became Drukhari and just said, you know what? Done with it. Done with it. I'm going to get my experiences wherever I can. And if that means flaying the crew of this ship alive, then that's what I'm going to do. At which point, you are then basically obligated by your character to go find things and do whatever it takes to satiate your needs. That could be very interesting. And Tux says, honestly, in 40k, any two races seeing each other and not immediately killing each other is not a thing. Or at least not for over a session or two. That is wrong, actually. It's not wrong in the general sense. However, number one, especially with the Tau. The Tau are really fond of the ask questions first and shoot later approach. Because after all, the Tau want to spread the greater good. And it's hard to spread the greater good when people are dead. Which is why they usually send emissaries from the water caste to every new civilization they find and try to convert them over. And they're actually really good at it. To the point where they've managed to recruit the Kroot, even though the Kroot are like savage. They got the Vespid, even though the Vespid are literally bugs. And I don't have it pulled up right now, obviously, but there's a large faction of humans in the Tau Empire. I don't remember specifically what they're called, but they're there. And not only are there large populations of humans in the Tau Empire, not only are they, maintaining their worlds and like farming for food and mining for materials and everything else, there are even humans who fight. I mean, they're not part of a normal Firecast cadre, but there are actual human contingents that will take to the battlefield for the Tau and fight. So, I mean, that is a huge thing right there that goes or flies right in the face of the whole they don't really shoot at each other thing. The other thing is this, which you got to in your next point. You say, at which point an Inquisitor, I can't see because of stupid heart, but I guess an Inquisitor visits the party and ends the heretic and the Xenos. This is the other thing. I already mentioned that when we do this, it's probably going to be kind of rogue trader-ish. The reason being, if we made this where you guys are part of a Space Marine chapter, everybody has to play Space Marines. Okay? You can play Space Marines, or you can be a Tech Marine, or a Librarian, or whatever you want, but either way, everybody has to play Space Marine. Why? Because it's the Space Marine factions. They don't have anything else. The same thing is true of the Imperial Guard. You can choose what kind of Imperial Guardsman you are. Maybe you carry a heavy weapon. Maybe you carry a rifle. Maybe you're a Commandant. I don't know. Why not? But either way, you're all playing human. You're all just part of the Imperial Guard. And you're all going to go where you're ordered to go. You're going to do what you're ordered to do, and you are going to die because that is what the Emperor orders you to do. And even if we went with, say, the Tau, which, I mean, are much more free and open than the rest of them, you're still limited to being either a Tau, and granted, there's a lot of opportunities there because you can be whatever Tau you want, or you can essentially be a human... what's the word that I want? They're not citizens. In fact, I don't even think the Tau really have citizens. You do not even enjoy the full rights of a normal Tau, but you are allowed to live and to serve. So you get that. And that's like the best I can offer you if you play Tau. But rogue traders, because of these services they provide, are given latitudes that, as you just said, Tux, kind of the quasi-heretical necessities of 40k. They are literally the necessary evil. Rogue traders can have Xenos on their ships. Why? Because all they have to say to the Inquisitor is, I need it. Okay? I might need to get into an Eldar Craftworld. So I need to have an Eldar on board. Alright? That guy over there? That's a Tau Ethereal. Do you realize that, like, every piece of Tau technology I have brought in has been because of that Tau right there? Okay? Oh, and by the way, the unsanctioned Psyker standing at the back of the bridge, yeah, that's my Psyker. No, you can't have my Psyker. I need my Psyker because that Psyker is also what gets me through the warp. So either you're going to provide me with a sanctioned Psyker, good luck with that, or you can let me keep my Psyker and I will continue to bring you new artifacts. And you know what the Inquisitor is going to do? The Inquisitor is going to check their little clipboard and they're going to say, yep, everything seems to be in order here. I'm going to let you go on your way. Thank you for your service to the Empire, and I look forward to seeing you the next time you're in the system. Make sure you bring something valuable, and then they're going to leave. It's literally the only way I can make this work, and I do feel like it is kind of pigeonholing a little bit, saying that you're going to be playing rogue traders, but the only other option I have left, and mind you, this is an option. If everybody in the game decides that they want to play Space Marines, I will write a game for Space Marines. But at that point, it's a player choice. And I will abide by the player's choices. If everyone decides that they want to play Imperial Guardsmen, then we'll do that. To that end, actually, I mean, since we're talking about it, we have not done Orcs, Chaos, Necron, Drukhari. Not yet. But if all of my players state that they want to do an Orc war, then we will sit down and we will develop an Orc race. Like, I am here to facilitate. I am the DM. My job is to run the game. And I will run whatever game the players want to play. I just feel that the whole rogue trader aspect offers the most flexibility, but I will run whatever game the players want. Tux also says the Inquisitor is going to curse and swear, accusing the rogue trader of being a heretic and a traitor before leaving the ship and doing nothing about it. I mean, that's equally possible. In fact, that's probably more probable. But the end result is the same. I mean, rogue trader is the only way you're going to get away with this. But like I just said, if we don't want to go the rogue trader route and everybody agrees that they want to do a very specific campaign for a very specific faction, I'm good with it. I mean, I will just be thrilled to use the module at all. So it's open, and we'll see what happens once we get to this one. Alright, so where were we then? Right, here we go. So they must learn to control the darker side of their natures, which is no less an essential portion of the Aeldari psyche, and the source of catastrophe that nearly caused their extinction. We knew that. For this reason, the Asari are defined as a culture by their pursuit of the Asuryani path. This philosophy teaches them how to balance their potent minds and pursue constructive goals, rather than falling to the amoral pursuit of pleasure and selfishness that ultimately destroyed the ancient Aeldari and still defines their dark kin, the Drukhari. I was right. I've been calling them Drukhari this entire time, and I wasn't even sure if that was the right word. I'm so glad I'm right. I look so much less dumb now in retrospect. The Aeldari are a naturally psychic species, and all Asuryani possess the potential to become powerful psychers if they choose to pursue this path. Asuryani can use these innate abilities to shape matter, which lies the foundation of their extraordinary command of technology. Though highly advanced and feared across the galaxy, the Craftworld Aeldari are still a dying people in the late 41st millennium, a shadow of their former glory, and their species teeters on the brink of final annihilation. Alright, and then we get into all of this stuff. Now, a lot of this we are going to skip, like the entire history section. If you want to learn about the history, there are much better places to do it than here. I recommend Luton. Luton does fantastic videos, and if you want to learn anything about anything 40k, he has probably a 5-hour video on it. And I know what you're saying, 5 hours. That is like longer than half of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I could do anything in 5 hours. And you want me to listen to a video? The answer to that is yes. Go listen to that video. Okay? It is 5 hours that will absolutely change your life in terms of 40k. Go do it. Alright, so we're going to skip the history. We will do the anatomy and physiology. We will take a look at their technology. The Asuryani path. Wow, okay. Path of the warrior, path of the outcast, and then other paths? Okay, I was unaware of that. When they said the Asuryani path, I thought it was just one path. I don't know what we're going to do with that. We'll have to come back to that. So, we're going to do the Eldar race. Why don't we do next the Asuryani paths? Afterwards, we can go into their technology. And we look at technology. Let's see. The materials they use for the engineer are complex and varied ectoplastics that can be formed into solid shapes under psychic pressure. In some respects, they're more like living tissue than inert substance, growing and reacting to their environment. Their greatest materials are called wraith bones. We knew that. Artisans known as bone singers. I actually did know that one. This just kind of talks about how their technology works, which is good. Ah, here we go. Unique Asuryani technology. Asuryani war gear, shuriken weapons. Okay, so like, so Imperial Guard primarily use laser and plasma. Mechanicus primarily use radiation-themed weapons. Space Marines use explosives in the form of bolters. The Tau use everything. Apparently, the Eldar use shuriken weapons. So, they use gravitic forces to fire thin discs only a single molecule thick at the enemy. These discs are so thin that they are usually fired in bursts. The Asuryani use these weapons in the form of pistols, cannons, and light carbines known as the shuriken catapult. They have spirit stones. When they die, their souls are in danger of being devoured by the warp, or in the warp by the chaos god Slanesh. To prevent this, they created special spirit stones which capture and contain the psychic energy that comprises their souls at the moment of death. There we go. That's how that works. So yes, you can be immortal. You have to carry a spirit stone. And if you're carrying a spirit stone, it will essentially save your character sheet. The character may be dead, but all we have to do now is, I guess, find a new body and then do something. Let's see. Where they may rest with the spirits of their ancestors in times of need, the spirit stones of the Craftworld's strongest warriors may be taken from the Infinity Circuit and placed inside of Wraith Bone automatons such as the Wraith Guard, Wraith Lord, or Wraith Knight to once again fight in defense of the Craftworld, though most Asuryani find the process to be deeply distasteful and akin to necromancy. Interesting. We'll have to look into that. So, Wraith Guard, Lord, and Knight, I believe, are their giant mechs, meaning that if your character was to die, as we discussed before, according to the rules as written, when we looked at the Starship rules, and we were looking down at the expansion base, cargo hold. So a cargo hold can hold or contain approximately 25 tons of goods, with no item being larger than large. Now, while I am not entirely certain by for what they mean by that, what I think they mean is that we can actually, no, now that I think about it, I think I might have misinterpreted this before. When it says 25 tons of goods with no item being larger than large, I think it means 25 tons of anything that is not larger than large. That actually makes more sense. However, that being said, a hangar bay can only be installed in a gargantuan or larger starship. We could probably do more. Here's the thing. When it comes to the size of the cargo bay, I think we can be a little bit flexible and say, if your Eldar character were to die, and if you were to somehow procure, I don't know, a Wraith Knight, if you still had the spirit crystal thing, the spirit stone, and you could plug that in, then your character could then live inside of that mech inside the cargo bay. Now, that would mean a couple of things. Number one, your character would no longer really be able to participate in things like starship travel, because being a giant mech now can't exactly access the bridge or any other computer console, really. However, it does mean that your character would essentially be the equivalent of an Eldar dreadnought, where you might not be able to do everything that everyone else is doing, but when it came to combat, like, second to none. It's a potential. We may have to look into that. Then, of course, they have the Webway, which we will get to when we cover the Warp. Wraithbone is their particular materials, and the Blackstone Fortress, which is a location and not really a technology. Okay, so we will go ahead and say Eldar technology right there. So we've got the path, we've got their technology, then there's war hosts. What is this? Like the shimmering blade of Cain, Eldar war hosts carve through the ranks of their enemies, guided by the military genius of their Autox? I'm not even sure how you pronounce that. In the presence of their Farseers, they turn their minds to war with a single deadly purpose, dispatching their foes with blistering speed and masterful skill. Grace in battle and merciless efficiency are prized virtues of Craftworld Eldar armies. Eldar war hosts are led by those who epitomize such traits, the Autarchs. These are Eldar who have walked the path of the warrior for decades or even centuries, yet resisted the taint of Cain's red madness. So this is like a prestige thing for Eldar, I guess. What is this? I can't really show this on the screen, but let's see. There's Fireseers and Autarchs. Farseers can become Warlocks. Farseers and Autarchs together can become Guardian Battle Hosts, Aspect Shrines, Engines of Vol, Wraith Hosts, or Outcasts? I'm not entirely certain how to read all this. Probably if I knew more about them, I might know better. But it says Outcasts are Rangers? Well, Rangers are a class that we play. I wonder if it's the same thing. The rest of these are Guardians with Viper Squadrons, War Walkers, Support Batteries, Wind Riders. The Aspect Shrines become Dire Avengers, Howling Banshees, Striking Scorpions, Fire Dragons, Warp Spiders, Swooping Hawks, Dark Reapers, Shining Spears, and Crimson Hunters. I wonder if these are all different kinds of troops. Which, if they are, that could significantly complicate things. Let's see. Asuryani Craftworlds. Don't need to know about that. I mean, they are so much larger than any other ship. We will never actually build one. They will just be settings. Alright, well, we have enough to start with at least. So, why don't we try that then? And let's see if we can build a race. So, we're going to go back to the Tau races so that I can just copy and paste this. So copy and paste. But then we're going to check or change this. So this is going to be Aeldari, and they are just the Aeldari, so nothing we got to do there. They are the Aeldari subtype. Now, ability modifiers. This is going to be kind of tough. So let's go down to the anatomy and physiology and read up more specifically. And we start with a quote. Monkey. And here's the other thing. When we were talking about them, about people shooting first and asking questions later, I mentioned the Tau. The Eldar have also had conversations with the Imperium. Now, a lot of those were after they got captured by the Imperium, to be fair. But the fact is that they have talked. And so if we can talk, there is a chance that they could work together. But it says, Monkey, we do not fight for you or for your corpse emperor. We are allied here today because destiny has seen fit to bind our fates together. We do not relish that our futures are intertwined. But if you would live to see another day, then you will do as I say. Order your soldiers to cease firing their primitive artillery on the ridgeline, for it is there the Asuryani war host will arrive. My kin will drive the tainted ones back towards your lines, where you would do well to be prepared. And please, above all else, stand downwind from me. So, I mean, right there, it is a quote from an Eldar to an Imperium something. That shows promise there. It shows cooperation. It shows that they can work together. Alright, superficially, the Aeldari appear very similar to humans in their anatomy, though the comparison can only be made on a superficial basis, for in their minds and souls, the Aeldari are truly alien. They stand taller than a human male, with longer and cleaner limbs and handsome, striking features to human eyes. However, I'm going to still say that they're medium size. They don't look to be that much bigger than humans. And since humans are the baseline, if they're not that much taller... Because you got to remember that when we're talking about like what makes medium size is literally double the size of... Or large is double the size of medium. So if medium is human, and humans are about 2 meters tall, give or take, that means that large is starting at about 4. So even if the Aeldari are taller than humans, they're not that much taller. So still going to be very much medium size. That can be deleted. This can be adjusted. So, medium humanoid, Eldar subtypes. And I wrote subtile over here. I don't know why. Let's see, their skin is pale and unblemished as polished marble, yet with a surprisingly supple strength hiding behind it. Their keen ears are pointed, and their slanted eyes possess a penetrating quality more akin to that of a hunting cat than a man. Wonderful flavor text, good description, nothing really mechanical there though. The most fundamental difference can be seen when the Aeldari move, for they each radiate an inhuman elegance and poise. This is especially evident in the sinuous grace with which they fight and the dexterity with which they field their weaponry. Every gesture is laden with the subtle intent, and their reflexes are dazzlingly fast. A casual, languid gesture can end in a pinpoint thrust should the necessity arise. So we already know they're beautiful. That would be normally a charisma upgrade. However, I do have to countenance this. They're also very dismissive of almost every race. Like, you saw the quote above when they were talking to the humans. So they may be absolutely gorgeous. I mean, perfect specimens, every single one of them. But they also would drive people off every time they open their mouth. So perhaps we don't give them the bonus to charisma just because it balances out. Instead, what if we focus on that dexterity? And we give them a bonus to dexterity because we can give them one bonus without having to add in any negatives. If we add in another positive, we have to add a negative, and then where does it go? Because that's kind of hard. I mean, they're not implied to be any weaker than humans, so it's hard to take away there. They seem to be just as sturdy as humans, so we can't take away from Constitution. Intelligence, wisdom, easily higher than humans. But if I give them any of these bonuses, I gotta take away somewhere, and where do you take away from them? So I am really left with just kind of one option. Well, no, I take it back. There's actually a couple of options. I could allow for a choice. We could give them the +2 to dexterity, and then I could give the option of a +1 to any and a +2 to any and a -2 to any. And then let you, as the player, choose what you want to prioritize. That is an option. Let's see. On closer inspection, every aspect of the Aeldari physiology betrays their alien nature. Their hearts, multiple, beat at twice the speed of a human's, and their minds... Oh, okay, they're referring to them in the plural. So, their heart beats at twice the speed of a human, and their mind race through possibilities and process emotions so fast that even the so-called geniuses of human history appear dull by comparison. Even their lives are greater in span. The Craftworld Aeldari enjoy lives of rich sensation and wonder that can stretch over 1,000 Terran years, unsullied by illness, frailty, or disease, unless they die by violence or accident. Wow. Okay, so they are basically just immortal. You know, I'm wondering, actually, and let me know in the comments what you think about this. What if we just built an Eldar? Like, what if we just built the Eldar as it says? And go ahead and give them a bonus to pretty much everything. Because we already know they're going to have a lot of racial abilities too. What if we make this a prestige race? Which is to say, a race with a level adjustment. If we come back to Pathfinder, and we come down to races, what we have here is we have our core races here. We have our standard races, okay? Then we have advanced races, monstrous races, very powerful races. Now the thing about these is that these will come with what's called a level adjustment. And I'm pretty sure that we've discussed these before. But what this essentially means is that with a level adjustment, your race essentially counts as a level. That means that you could have a level 1 drow, okay? So, common drow. And this is rather tiny, so let me make this bigger. So, a common drow. This is the standard drow. So, it's a humanoid elf, it's medium, it's normal. Their ability score modifiers are really nothing to write home about. However, they get elven immunities, they get spell resistance lesser, they get perception, they get spell-like abilities, they get poison use, they get weapon familiarity plus dark vision, which gives them 14 points. Now, what does that mean? This means that every level adjustment takes away from your profession level. To make that a little bit more simple, let's say that you wanted to play, I'm just going to say a fighter, okay? You want to play a fighter, all right? So when making your character, you decide that you're going to roll up a fighter, okay? You know where you're going to put your stats and everything else. Now, normally you would pick your race first, and then you would pick your class. In this case, though, let's say that you wanted to play that fighter, but then you decide you want to play a drow fighter, okay? Well, everyone has to start off at level 1. That means that if you want to play a drow fighter, the drow is going to come with a 1 level adjustment. So you will have 1 level for the drow, but that's going to take away the 1 level from your fighter. That means that if you take a drow with your level 1 party, everyone is just starting off, then that means that you may have a gnomish wizard, okay? And you may have an elven rogue. Maybe you have a half-orc cleric in there. And then there's you. You will actually start off as a drow commoner, because you don't have a profession yet. Because that 1 level adjustment for the drow is going to take away from the fighter, and a level 0 fighter is just a commoner. We may have to do this for the Aeldar. If we look down here even further, this is for a noble drow. So still an elf, still medium, still normal. However, the ability scores, +4 to dexterity, and then a +2 intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Sounding familiar? Their languages are just standard, but they do get elven immunities. They get spell resistance greater. They get perception. They get spell-like abilities, lesser, greater, and constant. They get a spell-like ability at will, which is a massive 16 points. Poison use, weapon familiarity, and dark vision for a total of 41 points. That means that if you wanted to play this noble drow, you're talking about a 3 level adjustment, because you can have 10 points for free. That means that as everybody else is leveling up, your character doesn't. It's not to say that your character does not level up at all. Obviously not. But when we look at the classes, and we look at all of these, let's see, sorcerer, bard, wizard. I don't want to see all the core classes. I want to see all the classes. If we come down to the bottom, here we go. You would have essentially 3 levels of commoner before you could take your first actual class. So that means that every time you leveled, you would roll a d6 for your hit die. You would get to put points into climbing, crafting, handling animal, perception, profession, ride, swim. You would only get 2 skill points per level, plus your intelligence modifier, which, to be fair, because you are such an advanced race, you have a really high intelligence. We could do this with the Aeldar. We could absolutely do this with the Aeldar. It would give them a level adjustment. And it means that if you wanted to play an Aeldar, you would be behind the advancement with everybody else. Now, that being said, you also have to keep in mind that when it comes to being like a drow, keep in mind that at level 1, with no other class abilities, your level 1 drow noble has all of this. So let's come down here and look at this and keep this in mind. We're talking about a level 1 drow. Where is it? This is the standard racial traits. Uh-oh, what did I just break? Okay, there we go. Make that a little bit easier to read on the large side. Favorite class options, racial feats. This just says standard racial traits. I want to see the noble drow. Does it lead to a different sheet? So, monstrous, here we go, drow noble. No, at least it's the same page. So, again, we're still talking about a level 1 character here. But I'm not seeing the information on like the spells that they get. I don't know, maybe it's more flexible. Maybe you can pick them. So, spell-like ability, lesser, greater, constant, and at will. Maybe I can find that under how we create the custom races. Maybe not. Anyway, you get the idea, though. Even if, as I think it is, I think that spell-like ability lesser are cantrips. I think greater is level 1. And constant is just that. It's usually a cantrip that is always active. And then spell-like abilities are usually either level 0 cantrips or level 1 spells that they can just use all the time. But imagine that you're a level 1 character and you have the ability to just cast a missile once a day. Doesn't cost you anything. Or spell-like abilities where you can use things like hypnotism or ghost sounds or whatever it is, at will, whenever you want. You get the idea of how potent this kind of character would be. I think that's what we're looking for when we talk about the Aeldari. Starting the party off at level 1, having an Eldar with you would just be like babysitting. Because the Eldar is going to be so much stronger. And Jeffrey says, what's my opinion on Craig? I don't know what Craig is, or who Craig is. You'll have to enlighten me as to who that is before I can have an opinion on them. I think that's what we're going to do, though. I think we're going to turn the Eldar into a really powerful race. I don't know if we have time for this today. But here's what we're going to do. I am not going to increase their strength because I don't think their strength is really that much greater than a human's. But I am going to say they get a +2 to dexterity. Now, their constitution doesn't seem to be anything special. They can be shot, they can be killed just like anybody else. However, to represent their knowledge, it's going to be +2 intelligence. To represent their long lifespan, a +2 to wisdom. And to to recognize their beauty and grace, a +2 to charisma. With no penalties. So already we are talking about, if we were going to look at this, and I wish I knew where their custom race builder was. Races. There are those. Drow Noble. Race points unknown. Do they have a list here? Hold on. I gotta do a search for this, because if this is in the wiki, it'll be super handy for what we're doing. Let's see. Creating new races is under game mastering. Okay, hold on. Game mastering. Now, where is it? Game mastering, other rules. This is other rules systems. I'm not sure if that's what I wanted. Oh no, wait, it is totally under that. I was right. Other rule systems. And then, here we go. Creating new races. Perfect. That's what I wanted. And I have to come back here because I am absolutely certain that Starfinder doesn't have these rules. So let's take a look. Concept, we've already got the concept. We're making an Eldar. Step 2 is racial qualities. So we're talking about the type quality, whether they're half construct, half undead. Neither one of those is true. Size quality, it's a medium, so there's nothing there. Base speed, probably the same. Ability score modifier quality, that's what we have to look for, and language quality. So, let's go ahead and look. Average party level, 1 to 5, plus 1 level, plus 0 level, yeah. So we already know this is going to be at least a +1 level, but we're going to work on that. So, step 1, concept, we already know that. Here we go, racial quality. So the type quality. It's going to be humanoid, it's going to be an Eldar, it's fine. So, not an aberration, not a construct. Special subtypes, it's not a half construct, although that is kind of interesting. Kind of wish I would have looked this up when we were doing the Mechanicus. This might have been handy. Although it does say here that half constructs do not breathe, eat, or sleep unless they want to gain some beneficial effect. That is absolutely not true because the Mechanicus do eat, breathe, sleep. At least I assume they do. Half undead, not needed. Dragons, fays, humanoids, there's no bonus for that. Plants, undeads, fine. Size. So they are not large, they are medium. Speed. They are normal speed. Now, ability score modifier quality. So the advanced, which is +4 RP. Pick either a mental or physical ability score. Members of this race get a +2 bonus to all of those, and a +4 to one bonus score of the other type, and a -2 to one ability score of the other type. Alright, so this sounds close to what we're doing. Our Eldar has a +2 to all of the mental stats, all the soft stats. We are only giving a +2 bonus to dexterity, though. Which means if we take 2 off of here, then we can take the 2 off of here as well. Which means it's still going to be advanced. So over here, this is going to be 4 RP. And we'll actually keep track of this. Paragon, no, we don't need that. Language quality, they have their own language, but they speak a lot of them. So that's pretty much just standard. Members of this race start with common plus their racial language, if any. Which I haven't really put in here, but I mean, we can. So, languages. That's going to be common and Aeldari. Makes sense. Okay, racial traits. This is going to be a bit harder because this is going to be completely detached from everything here. But here we have score modifiers. Nothing here I think we're going to really need. Interestingly, Ancient Foe could apply to the Drukhari, honestly, but probably not. We're going to have enough things to give them already. So, let's start working on this. The first thing we're going to do is their immortality. So, immortality. Aeldari do not suffer from aging. Now, I don't know if we already have this in here or not. I don't know how many points this is going to be. But I mean, that's a lot. Deathless Spirit, this is a resisting against negative energy damage. Nope, not what I want. Elven immunities, no. I wonder. What if I just type in age? 163 results. Yeah, that's my fault. Immortal? Something here. Immortal Spark. Members of this race gain a +2 on knowledge history checks and saving throws against death effects. And they gain the following spell-like ability, Lesser Age Resistance. What is that? This functions as lesser age resistance, except you ignore the strength, dexterity, and constitution penalties gained at middle and old age. So, age resistance greater functions as lesser age resistance, except you ignore all strength, dexterity, and constitution penalties gained from middle age, old age, and venerable age. Interesting. Okay, so it's not necessarily immortality, but what we're going to do is give them greater age resistance. So age resistance greater, and we'll copy this link. Alright, so that takes care of the immortality. They are all psychers. And so just... So all Eldar roll for psychic strength, re-roll, and I don't remember how exactly the these psychers are measured, but basically we're just going to re-roll 0 psychic ability. So if you play Eldar, you are guaranteed to have psychic ability. Now, that being said, being a psyker, wait, go back. Magical racial traits. Let's come down here. So here we go. Standard traits, magical, arcane focus, change shape, deep magic, elemental affinity, elemental summoner, elven magic, enclave protector, envoy, fell magic. No. Of desire, pyromaniac, shadowcaster, spellic ability. Here we go. So this is spellic ability lesser. Wow, lesser is a second level or lower spell that does not attack a creature or deal damage. Members of this race can use a spell like ability once per day. See, this trait costs as many RP as the level of the spell chosen, so a minimum of 1 RP. It can be taken up to 3 times each time you choose an additional spell and adjust the cost of this trait appropriately. But I want more. Spellic ability greater. Choose a 3rd or 4th level spell that does not attack a creature. And let's see. JP says, I need some age resistance myself. Yeah, I could use some of that. And Jeffrey says, the Eldar look almost like elves. No, they actually do. They have the unnatural grace and beauty of an elf. They even have kind of the pointed ears, a little bit. They're essentially just 40k elves. Which kind of makes sense because, as I understand it, Warhammer 40k was it was an offshoot of the original Warhammer game, which is fantasy. And never really did all that well from what I heard. But it literally had dwarves and orcs and elves and everything else. And so when it came to 40k, the knights became space marines. The orcs, they didn't really change that much, honestly. But your elves became Aeldari, you know, things like that. Alright, so spellic ability greater. No. Spellic ability at will. Choose a 3rd level spell or lower. Members of this race can use this spell at will. This costs as many RP as twice the level of the spell chosen, minimum of 2. Up to 5 spells can be chosen when you take this trait. And each time you take an additional spell, adjust the RP cost for this trait appropriately. Now, because of the way psychic abilities are going to work, and we may have to adjust this, Psychic abilities are not going to necessarily be based on levels. It's going to be how much concentration do you want to put into it, and how much energy are you trying to channel. So we're going to have to be creating something similar to what we did with the Wheel of Time, and creating kind of not a list of spells so much, although we will have spells that we can do, but creating the template for how to create your own effects. Again, we'll work on it. But for now, I want to go ahead and make this as expensive as possible. So this costs as many RP as twice the level of the spell chosen, minimum 2. So if we go with 3rd level spells, that's 6 each, up to 5. 6 times 5 is 30 points. So 30 RP. Oh, one thing that I forgot to put on here. Let's see. Immortal Spark is what gave us that lesser age resistance. Actually, I wonder. Spell-like abilities. Let's get down there again. Constant spell-like divination. I don't want that. Spell-like ability variable. I don't see spell-like ability constant. Oh wait, here we go. Spell-like ability constant is 3 RP. And this is... Actually, this looks familiar. Yep, that's the Drowned Noble. I didn't see constant. So, let's see. Monstrous traits. Spell-like ability at will. We already did that. Let's see. Greater... And this is just constant spell-like divination. But you know what? Well, it doesn't really tell me what level these spells are. So I don't know where it factors into, like, the age resistance. I don't know. I'll figure it out later. We're kind of running long on time as it is. So everybody is a psyker, and that may have to be adjusted later. The double morale bonuses. So we're going to call this emotionally intense. And this will double all morale modifiers. This is pretty much a free ability because it is just as detrimental as it is beneficial. They're going to have a bonus on will save. So... dual-minded. There should be something... There should be a very small bonus. Stubborn, will saving throws, narrowed fascination, terrifying croak, frightful gaze, no. Dual-minded is 1 RP, stubborn is 2. And that's really the only ones that give you bonuses to those. So dual-minded and stubborn. I'm going to go ahead and go with the 2 RP on this one. So we can call this... I'll rename it later, probably, but I'm just calling this Hardened Will. And this is going to be a +2 to will saves. And we're just going to call this a +2 RP. What else do we have? Right. The whole rebirth aspect. So we can call this the, what did they call those circuits? Infinity circuits. Okay, so we can call this, the infinity cycle. And this is simply if, the Eldar possesses a spirit stone, save their character for future rebirth. Now, how many RP is that? I have no idea, because that doesn't exist, like, anywhere. But it does mean that if you have that spirit stone, then there's always a chance that you come back. Now, how's that going to work in the game? I don't know. But I do know that right now we are looking at so far, and we don't have things for, like, the emotionally intense. We don't have for this. We don't have for their normal immortality, but we're already up to 36 RP, which is already, according to this thing, actually not as high as I thought it would be. So according to this, the average RP is about 20, and at 20, it would be a +1 level. 30 is about a +2 level. So yeah, right now we're currently looking at a +2 level adjustment, but we haven't added the others in, so we may end up in the 40 territory. Still though, it should be worth it. If you wanted to play an Eldar, you would be an extremely powerful Eldar right out the gate. I mean, that is a lot. You are just naturally better than everybody at pretty much everything. Because, again, it's not just these things. The dexterity is going to make your armor class better by default. The intelligence will make your, it will make your skills better than everybody else. Your +2 wisdom is going to give you +1 to your will save. Plus the Hardened Will, which gives you another +2 to your will save for a total of +3. And you haven't even allocated your skills yet. +2 Charisma? Who doesn't like Charisma? You're immortal, so it doesn't matter how old your character is. You're still in the prime of your life. You are automatically Psyker, whether you want to use it or not. I mean, you're going to be kind of monstrous. That being said, though, you will start off with basically no skills. So everybody else will be playing with their different profession abilities and stuff like that. And all you will have is just, I don't know, a pistol. And whatever psychic abilities you happen to have. I'm not even sure if Commoner is really even in Starjammer. I haven't looked, because I haven't needed to. But I will look later. See what the equivalent will be. Otherwise, I will have to adapt the Commoner from Pathfinder into Starjammer, or Starfinder. But this is kind of my specialty, so I can do that. Anyway, though, I feel like I've kept everybody long enough, and we have a pretty good looking Eldar right now. If I feel like I need to make any modifications to it, I may do so at the beginning of the next stream. But all of that aside, I think it's looking good. So when we come back next time, we will take a look at those Asuryani paths, figure out what those are, what those do, what that's going to affect. I don't know if those are going to be like a bonus that we get, or if they turn out to be like their own custom profession or class. It could be its own custom class. I don't know. But we'll have to wait until next time to see that. So, I am going to go ahead and get out of here, take a bit of a break. I got other things I gotta get done today. So do you, though. I'm not special. So if you want to see what happens with the Eldar next time and what we can do with them, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the bell icon. That way you get notified when these videos come out. I will say thank you to everybody who came out today, because I saw a whole bunch of old faces that I'm really glad to see again. Thank you, JP, for coming in. Thank you, Blizz, even though you're not here anymore. Thank you, Tux. Thank you, Jeffrey. It's good to have all of you back. If you know somebody else who might also enjoy these, then share it with them. Invite them in. Watch it together. It'll be a bonding experience. You, me, your friend, we'll all be better for it afterwards. That aside, though, if you just like what I'm doing, go ahead, leave a like on the video. If you got comments for me, leave them down in the comment section, or even better, join the Discord. If you want to play the game with us, you'll have to join the Discord anyway. And Tux, watch your mouth. I understand what you just said there. You might sneak that past everybody else, but I got that. Anyway, though, come join us on the Discord. You can leave comments there. You can share pictures. You can do whatever you want. I mean, it's pretty open. Don't violate the terms of service or anything, but beyond that, it's pretty free. Anyway, I will see you next time for the Eldar, or what is it? The Asuryani Paths. I gotta practice saying that name. That is a hard name for me to say. So next time we do the Asuryani Paths, and until then, take care.